Welcome to the first ever episode of the Polymath Podcast. I think I speak for everyone saying we're super excited to interview one of our professors, educators, creators, Keith Buhler.
I'm so excited.
Honored to be here.
Before we get into the nitty gritty of your origin story and all that you do, please introduce yourself and how you want to be known in the world.
Yeah, so I'm Keith Buhler. I have a few hats right now. I'm a Hildegard faculty in the humanities. My day job is I'm a headmaster of a classical K-12 Christian school, Christian academy, here at St. Andrew Orthodox Church. And I have a real estate business on the side. Gotta have that side hustle. Mm-hmm. Do lots of other things. Have some academic stuff in philosophy, and try to keep my hand in a few creative things. I got some artwork around here, so
yes,
that's me.
We'll put that in the B-roll for sure.
Yeah.
Show the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we basically have some questions. I know we were really interested in how you started getting interested in all these different hats that you wear and creating your own, business, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from some young, broke kids, it's so fascinating how things get started. So I know Lydia has some questions written out. I want to give her the floor.
Yeah. Well, are we gonna start with origin story? What would you consider your origin story of Keith Buhler?
That's a good question. I mean, looking at it now, you start to make connections where it's I used to be interested in that. I used to be interested in that. Mm-hmm. But it's not when you could be interested in a lot of things. It really takes time to try things out and see what sticks. Mm-hmm. And then in retrospect, you're I was always interested in that. But I guess I would say my origin story is starting with homeschooling. Mm. Where you have a lot of freedom to explore and just read books.
Yeah.
And then I got into education because of taking a classical great books course in college, which is what you guys are doing.
Yeah. And
that to me, at the time it was I don't know what's happening to me, because it was all these questions that I didn't even know I had were coming out, and I was full of wonder and fascination, and there was deeper stuff because I thought I was a deep thinker, but there was stuff that was way deeper than anything I'd ever considered, and professors that were way deeper, and so it was kind of I was I need to get good at this, whatever this is, and maybe it was reading or literature or great books or mathematics or philosophy or whatever. So I would say that's kind of where I really found that passion that I've had up to this day, and then everything has kind of radiated from that.
Mm-hmm. So education and learning it sounds like a huge motivator.
Yeah, learning old things that are not trendy and fashionable and cool. I'm interested in AI, I'm interested in kind of the up and coming latest things, but ultimately it's more of a novelty for me. I have a kind of skeptical wait and see attitude, but I know that Plato's relevant today. I know he's always going to be relevant.
Even though it's centuries ago.
Yeah, the older the better. The Old Testament, still relevant. And more relevant to the average school age kid than AI is.
Yeah.
So learning and that and then the freedom to learn. Being a teacher, I had freedom to learn. When my first teaching job, my best friend's a movie maker, and I was hey dude, I'm learning how to set goals and achieve things, right? Just the practical, how do you set a goal, make a plan, and follow through? Because that's the thing that I had so many ideas and so many interests that I never finished anything. I mean, I had piles of unfinished projects, right? So it's the question was, how do I do something and actually complete it? And if you can do something small and complete it, like a short story, then maybe you can do a short novella, and then maybe you can do a book. And I started getting good at that, just not hitting projects. And then I was hey, you are wanting to write movies, but you can't finish them. And I can finish things, but I don't know how to write movies. So why don't we team up? So we teamed up. We spent a year and we wrote 2 screenplays together.
No way. Nice.
I think the second year we wrote another one. So, but I was doing that while I was teaching part-time because I had the time and the space in my head. So part of you could say the downside of not having a career early on is that, you don't have a career early on. You don't get as far in your career. But the upside is I had a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. What was the first thing that you completed that felt oh my gosh, I can do this?
Dude,
Like, the ball is rolling now.
I think it was probably a paper that was like a Platonic dialogue for a college class. Because I love the Platonic dialogue format, and I was like, I think I get this. I think I can have two characters arguing with each other, you know? And when I wrote it, and it turned out pretty much how I wanted it, and my teacher liked it, I was like, it's happening. Yeah. So I've since written and published a Platonic dialogue that, you know, sells like a copy a month. It's not a bestseller, but I did it, and it's been fun, and I can share it with people. So
you have that finished product, like, I did this.
That's it.
That's so
just
awesome.
finishing things like that. That's like 80% of just finish what you start. Even if it turns out to be no good, at least you practiced going to the finish line.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's huge.
I had a couple questions about, you kind of talked about how you were unemployed for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and this was after college, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to hear about that and your fantasy of like just continuing learning.
Yeah, so I unlike some of my friends, I had a plan for a job.
Mm-hmm.
When I was graduated. I got my real estate appraising license as a junior and started working for my brother in my senior year in training. So when I graduated, I had a job. I was a real estate appraiser. This was 2004. If you remember, 2007 was the big real estate crash. So from 2004 to 2007, then everybody was buying and refinancing their homes, which triggers an appraisal. So there was tons of appraisal work. And so he told me I could make like $60,000 a year just getting out of college. I was like, this is great. Well, I did that for maybe 6 months to a year, and it never quite panned out. And so when he let me go, I was like, I already have an appraisal license. I'll start my own company. So I started my own company. The problem with that is, you know, again, big dreams. I was basically break even every month. I would spend money and I would make back that money.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then what I was doing with my other time, I was auditing college classes.
Oh.
I was in like the theater, the Biola theater program. So I was doing all these things that don't make money, and I was thinking I'm kind of making money. So after a while, it became clear that I was, you know, going deeper and deeper into debt, couldn't pay rent, and it was like, I don't think I'm really working. So I had to shut down the business, and my sister, I called my big sister, and I was like, what do I do? And she said, go like wait tables. You were like a host or whatever. Go wait tables until you figure it out. So I waited tables.
What age was this?
This was 22 or 23.
Young.
Yeah. So I had tried a business. I had tried some odd jobs. I started waiting tables. I started doing construction. But from the outside, and people said this, some of my friends said this, I was just kind of wandering, you know? From the inside, it felt like I'm doing all these cool things. But I didn't quite, like, I had friends that were like, grad school, career, boom, 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 lockstep, you know? And that was just never my dream. So during that period, I was underemployed, I guess they say, and losing money and all those things. And it was like, until I found that first teaching job, I could never imagine doing any of those things like as my career, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Once I got into teaching, it was like, I can do this.
Yeah. Would you say that you have like a personal mission throughout what you do?
I do. I have a personal mission. It's to advance Christian classical education throughout the world, throughout the country, throughout the world, starting with my 4 bio kids, my 111 students here, and then all throughout the country. I'm connected with a school in Australia now, so I can say throughout the world. Yeah, I'm mentoring as a priest who's starting a classical Christian school.
No way.
And so that's what I want to see happen.
That is so awesome. Sweet.
I think the best chance of people finding a robust faith, keeping their faith if they have it, fighting against the nonsense that we're kind of battling in our world today, is to read the classics, to understand where we are in history, and to understand what human nature is, and to decide, you know, am I going to cooperate with my human nature or am I going to fight it? That's the best shot we have, in my opinion.
Yeah. So you're pretty much like, you're a dad.
Yeah.
You're a teacher. You're a leader. You know, you lead these schools. Did you have a mentor who set an example for you, or does this kind of...
Yeah, a ton of mentors.
Okay.
Oh yeah, a ton of great mentors. I mean, if you look at how awesome my mentors are, then I should be way cooler. You know what I mean? Like, I've ignored a lot of good advice.
Yeah.
But my first mentor was a guy called Robert Puff. Even before him was a youth pastor, Jim Saladin, Father Jim Saladin now. He taught me to read the Psalms. He taught me the importance of church. Robert Puff's a psychologist. He's taught me, we talk about time management a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
He's taught me a lot about that and self-care. And then my professor, John Mark Reynolds, who I've got a picture back there, he's the one who introduced me to the classics and to the discussion. And the idea that you could have not just a 3-hour discussion, but a 12-hour discussion every day for 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
Like, you know. And then I've had other, you know, just mini mentors on specific things since then. Right now, my priest is my spiritual father, my mentor. He's like you know, we talk about leadership. He's a major leader. So when I come in with my little questions, he's like, oh, it's easy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say everything in life that's gone well for me has come back to mentorship.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it super? Well, how long have you been doing this school, St.
We're in our 3rd year.
Oh, okay. Okay. Have you had the opportunity to see, like, mentor, I don't know, some of your high school students and see them sort of flourish or learn new things? Like when we were reading The Republic with you and it was so mind-blowing to us. I'm sure that must have been super gratifying. Have you had, like, lots of those moments?
Yeah, you know, high schoolers, a prophet is not honored in his own country. You know, the high schoolers are kind of used to me now.
Okay.
And so they see my flaws as much
They're
as
just
my
like, oh,
strengths.
this is the guy that gives me homework every
Yeah,
day.
exactly, yeah. So I like to hope that they will be very grateful once they graduate. I've been teaching high school for 16 years, and I have good relationships with a lot of my former students, and they they have better perspective after they graduate, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for now, I'm content being like the hard teacher, like, read a lot of books, write papers, you know. But I do try to mentor, you know, like godchildren or the younger family members or friends, anybody that's open to input. I'm kind of, once I got the teacher bug in me, you know, it's like anybody who's willing to be taught, like I want to share what I know, and I want to learn what you know, and so that just tends to create some really cool relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
Super duper.
Something that you brought up was like self-care and productivity, like coexisting together, and because you do so many things, it's like how, like, we're college students, and like already we're like, how do we have time for anything ever? So I'm like, but you do everything. So
like
how?
You have kids, husband, work, real estate, school.
Yeah. What? How? So I don't know. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it didn't all come together overnight for sure. I think you could say I started being really productive in my like late 20s, and then from 30 to 35 I was in grad school, and I sort of had to be productive or else I wouldn't finish my program. I'd wash out. A huge percentage of people that start PhD programs don't finish, and I was like, it won't be me, you know. And then from 35 to 40, I'm 40 now, I took everything I practiced for those 5 years and just dialed it up to 11. So, but in my 20s, I was learning from people like, you know, David Allen. David Allen's the Getting Things Done guy. Brian Tracy.
Are those authors?
These are authors, and Brian Tracy, I listened to his audio CDs back in the day. You know, now he has MP3s. And
just dated yourself there.
I totally did. Yeah.
we'll edit that out.
Yeah, I've listened to self-help cassette tapes, like, unironically in my car. I was like,
that's awesome.
Driving around in college, like learning how to do real estate appraising. But yeah, just really like, you know, you just have to learn, like, the knowledge is out there. Assume that there's people out there who know how to do whatever you want to do, who know how to be like hyper productive but still at peace as a college student, like not even a professional, right? There's somebody out there who knows that, who has a course, who has a book, and so if you think, I really want to know that, you can find it. And if you can't find it, you can build it out of a few elements of what other people, do teach. This is sort of like a Robert Puff thing, is that like most of our life is patterned, is repeated, right? So mornings, evenings, you have your routines. Maybe in the midday, work is different every day, or school is different every day, but it's also like I go to work, I go to school. And so I think of it like, he talks about like getting those patterns to be really, really healthy and life-giving. Because if you do, over the course of 3 years, let's say it's about 1,000 days. Okay? Wow. So anything you do 1,000 times in a row is going to leave a mark, for better or worse. Reading the Bible every single day for 1,000 days, it's going to have an effect. Checking Instagram 1,000 times a day, or 1,000 times a day. Hopefully, 1,000 times over the course of 3 years. So, whatever, just watching basketball highlights or whatever, you're going to learn a lot of guys' names, you're going to learn a lot of teams, you're going to see a lot of great players. So it's not the big events, it's the little events on every single day for 3 days, for 3 years. So he talks about, silence, exercise, having a healthy meal or like a shake or things like this. These things that seem so trivial, but if you really build them into your routine, then you have all this strength and energy throughout the day, no matter what happens. You're very resilient. Yeah. So it's like morning, for me, like the morning is where everything starts. And if I get the morning right, the day, no matter what happens, is going to be a good day. I'm going to deal with the challenges. And if I have to be productive or creative, I can make space for that. And then the night, you got to wind down. And I no longer work at night. My wife and I don't have serious conversations at night, which is a limitation. Sometimes you're like, oh, we really got to talk, and the kids are funneling down. And we're like, yeah, we're not at our best. So we talk, between 7 and 9, but like we cut it off at some point. So nighttime, I used to try to work and write screenplays and get it all in, but I'm like, no, not anymore. So it's morning is for self-care, midday is for productivity, and the nighttime is for rest, including sleep, but like up before sleep. And that tends to be a really good rhythm that allows you to, produce, run 100 miles an hour, and not get exhausted. Because you're going to get back to the gym, or you're going to get back to your walk, or your run, or your silent time, or your book, and it's more sustainable. Yeah,
absolutely.
So did you learn all of this because you were getting exhausted and like not having a good routine?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And because I just wanted to do more stuff, and I was like, I can work my job and come home and watch TV and go to sleep. And I don't have the energy to do anything else. But, it's like, if you want to, I don't know, you want a machine that can lift a 5-pound weight or something like that. And then you go out there shopping, you find a machine that can lift 50-pound weights. You're like, well, wow, this is great. Like, if you want to be 10% more productive, to be 10% more productive, you're going to learn some productivity tips that are going to make you like 50% more productive. Yeah. So you might overcompensate these things, and then you're like, wow, what can I do with all this time? What can I do with all this energy? So yeah, having a lot of interests, is kind of where it started, and then figuring out like what's possible. And I've overextended before, where in grad school there was a point where I was working, grad school full time, had 2 part-time jobs and 2 kids, and I was like, Linz, I told my wife, I found my limit. I've never found my limit before. I'm like headaches all day, can't sleep at night, right? It's like I found my limit, so I had to pull back. So, and that what went was self-care went. When self-care goes, then the foundation goes, and everything starts to, it's a matter of time. Yeah. So I know there's guys out there that work 90 hours a week, and they claim to be able to sustain that. I don't believe them. But if they can do it, more power to them. I just found my limit,
Well, speaking of foundations and houses crumbling, how did you did real estate really early on, but it didn't work out. Yeah. How did you get back into that? What's the timeline of your education life, your teaching life, your creation of the school, and your real estate? What's sort of the chronological situation of that?
So my first teaching job was 2007, and between teaching, grad school, back to teaching. That's been continuous. I've always been in education from 2007. Our first investment property was 2012. And believe it or not, that coincided with starting grad school.
Wow.
So I think we had $10,000 in savings. We were living with our parents, two working, married couple, no kids. And so we were just saving money. Mm-hmm. And we had $10,000 and we were going to move to Kentucky for graduate school. And a realtor friend told me, well, if you're going to buy a house, because like renting was like, say, $650 a month and buying was like $650 a month. So we're like, this is what we should just buy a house even if we like sell and we leave or whatever. And he said, if you're going to buy, you should buy a duplex and rent out one side, which I now know is called house hacking.
I've heard of that. I'm interested.
Yeah,
more.
Totally. Yeah, just do it. Just do it. In California, it's hard,
yeah.
But you still can do it. I looked up, before we moved here, there was one triplex in Riverside for sale. And it was really run down, and it was definitely not the best place, but I'm 100% guaranteed that it's made money, So if you can find anything, even if it's a little bit undesirable, in California, you can probably make it work because the market's always going up. But anyhow, we found this duplex for $111,000. And
in Kentucky?
This is in Kentucky.
Okay.
It was 4 miles from University of Kentucky, and it already had a renter, and she was paying $450 a month. So the total mortgage for us was $200 a month. And we're like, yeah, I'm going to be a poor grad student. I'm going to have no rent almost. So we put an offer in. It got accepted. We moved in. It wasn't the nicest place we've ever lived, but we enjoyed our neighbor. We enjoyed the neighborhood. I could bike to work, so to speak.
Dream.
Yeah, and I was like, this is great. And so that was 2012. When we moved out, we got another renter for the other side, and now it was making $200 or $300 a month, which was going to pay down our rent at the new place. So we had that was just how we had for like 8 years. Yeah, and that's kind of how we got the bug.
Wow.
It grew from there. Was that like a moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this?
It was totally like that. Yeah, it was like, people would be like, I've always wanted to do real estate. And I was like, I can't believe I'm even doing it.
Yeah.
But it was not that hard to find the house. It was not that hard to make an offer. And because we were living there, we got what's called an FHA loan, Federal Housing Administration loan, which is only for first-time home buyers and only for if you're living there. So if you're an investor, you can't use this unless it's a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex. But you can put 3% down. 3% down on $111,000 is $4,000, and we had $10,000 in savings. So for $4,000, we got our first property. It's unbelievable now,
wow.
And we probably can't do it ever again. What happened was in 2020, as I was a teacher at a private school just before we started this place, and we were looking at our finances, like we got to be able to make more money, and it's like, well, this house is making us at this point $500 a month. What if we could just get a second one instead of getting a side job? That's $6,000, $7,000 a year. So what happened was we did a refinance of the first place to make most of the down payment for the second place. And that was more when I caught the bug. That was when I was like, I could do this a third time.
For real.
Yeah. So between 2020 and today, we've done 12 deals.
Wow. Okay.
So I kind of sprinted a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
So how much of your real estate business is doing your homework and knowing your stuff and being really logical about it? And how much is just taking the leap of faith and just doing it? Like when you did your first one, did you know
that's a good question.
Things, or were you like, I'm just going to figure it out along the way?
Definitely. I mean, I had that realtor friend, and I think I showed the house to my grandma. She's a realtor as well. And we're like, this is what we were thinking of buying. And she asked a bunch of hard questions I didn't know the answers to.
Sure.
But it was like, it's close to school and we can afford it. So there was a little bit of fear in that. Oh, and my wife hadn't even seen the place. I flew out and toured it and showed her videos. Like it's great, I swear. And she's like, I trust you.
Skipping the blood stains.
Yeah. No blood stains. The dogs are digging over there for some reason. So I would definitely say, so of the people I've talked to that, quote, want to get into real estate, like the thing that's usually holding them back is that they don't have the guts to just put money on the line. The risk part is really scary. And the risk part of my brain is broken. So I just I'm like, that looks cool. Let's do it, you know? So doing your homework is obviously important, and it will reduce your risk. There's deals where there's very little risk.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, even if it goes wrong, even if this assumption is wrong, this assumption is wrong, this assumption is wrong, you're still going to break even. You're not going to lose money.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good deal, you know? Unlike, let's say, like a stock or something like that. Stocks can go to zero, right? You could put in $5,000 and go to zero. If you put in $5,000 into real estate, you could potentially lose money if the market crashes and it's not rented and so on. But if it's going to be rented, if it's a good market, it's going to be rented, and the appreciation's slow and steady, you're going to make money over time. You can endure some storms, which is why if you actually look at other investment types, real estate is on the slowest end. So it's one of the least aggressive, least risky types, which is why banks like it.
Cool to know.
Yeah. So it takes time. If you start in your 20s, you can do amazing things. Yeah.
Cool.
If I knew what I knew now, I could have
Empire.
had a big portfolio, or at least enough to live on. Like imagine $6,000 a month.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life.
For you to do your, soul, passion, mission stuff.
That's right.
That would be so. Was that the reason why you got into real estate, or what? How did you?
No, it was just like kids are growing.
Gotcha.
Can't afford a minivan.
Yeah. Practical stuff.
And then it's like, well, now if it's working, well, what else how big can we dream on this thing? And then I've helped other people. I've helped like 4 or 5 people get started, and
wow.
Again, talking to people about their financial goals is very interesting. People, not everyone's interested in education, and so it's like dinner party conversation might be slow, but everybody's interested in making more money.
That's so true.
And so it's fun to talk about with people, and people say I've always wanted to do that. Then I'm like, well, how seriously do you want to do it? Because I've got a deal maybe here, you can invest your money in it.
Wow.
And so that's been fun.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Something I did want to touch on a little bit is, you are passionate about classical education and philosophy and stuff. How do you kind of navigate in the world where, as you put it, people love to talk about money and stuff, and then you have this other thing though that you're really passionate about that not as many people want to talk about? I don't know, how do you kind of
cope?
Yeah. Well, I married a philosopher, so that helps.
Okay.
Yeah, she studied philosophy and literature.
That's awesome.
And we, a big part of our life has always been book clubs. You have to have, if you don't have, maybe you have 20 or 30 friends or something like that, right? But you have to have a few intellectual friends, idea friends. You've got your work friends, and you've got your school friends, yeah. But if you got some idea friends where it's that's what the friendship's about. I've got friends who'll call me, or I'll call them just because we need to discuss an idea. I read this thing, I have to talk about it.
Yeah. We'll just put B-roll during that loss footage.
Yeah.
Continuity error.
So we were talking about book clubs.
Yeah, book clubs. Idea friends.
Yeah. So if you're not in a college or in grad school I had great friendships with all these people. They were there studying philosophy. So the number of relationships are definitely fewer, but worth the wait. So but if you start a book club, right now I have my teachers, and I have fellow headmasters, and I have lots of people to talk to. I have friends that went through the same honors, college experience, got a job, and don't have anyone to talk about ideas with. And it's they're oh my, or I'm their only idea friend. And they're dude, I was thinking about this thing, and I don't know how to articulate it, and what do you think about this? I'm oh, there's a book about that, So it's a hugely valuable thing to be able to understand somebody's thoughts and articulate them. Help me articulate this thought. What is this thought? Or do you have any new things that I haven't thought about, or any book recommendations? Those kinds of things. That's you could say the trade value of ideas, right? They really do advance relationships. But
bartering.
It's bartering, and I don't have any deals for you, but I have ideas. So the simple way to put that is to start a book club. This book club ran for 7 years. We only stopped because we left for grad school. And we restarted a little bit in grad school, but kids have made it really harder. But if you don't have kids, even if you're married, if you're not married, then form an intellectual community around a book club. It was great.
Yeah, that would be great for like young people too who are interested in ideas, because it's kind of hard to scrounge them up, you know?
Yeah, even find them to begin with.
Yeah, and it's weird how many people found it through like word of mouth.
Yeah.
There was literally a guy, I went to a Chinese restaurant, and the guy was sitting there reading like a philosophy book, and he goes, instead of being on his phone, and he goes, what can I get for you? And I was like, bro, what are you reading, you know? And it was like Wittgenstein or somebody like super, and I was like, I have a book club, you want to come? He's like, yes.
Yes, guerrilla marketing.
It was totally guerrilla marketing.
Big fan of that.
Cool.
And he came for like, I don't know, he only came for maybe half a year, but he ended up at UC Berkeley in the philosophy department.
No way.
I mean, like this guy was just random. It felt, I mean, serendipity, right? But it felt random.
Love that word.
And then somebody would just show up. Somebody just get an invite, and they would just show up. And if they fit, they fit. You know.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people came and went, but it was a really good. It's pure friendship. It's like we don't need each other. We're not using each other for whatever, like coworkers. We have to kind of all work on the same project. It's just being together. I thought that was beautiful.
Wholesome.
Mm-hmm.
Wholesome. How much of your school was started with like word of mouth guerrilla marketing?
The school started with like a pre-existing church community, which
Gotcha.
is unique. So there was maybe 30, 35 families that were like, we're in before I even got here.
Wow.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So normally they start smaller. We started with 100 kids, you know.
Wowza.
Yeah. Starting with 12 grades is hard. You know,
Oh yeah.
it's wise to start with like K through 3 and kind of grow up from there, stuff like that. But we were like, we got to serve everybody that needs to get out of the public school or get out of homeschool or get out of their private school. Like, so it's a unique situation for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like that you need a lot of teachers for that. That's
Yeah.
I had
crazy.
20 teachers from 0 to 20 within a year. Yeah.
Wow.
It was insane. But again, a lot of great people in the church that were like, they already knew about it. They want to serve. It was just a matter of really building a relationship with me because they knew each other. I was new to the church. I came from 2 hours away. So like I'm building a relationship with them, building trust, taking word of mouth recommendations, finding out people's availability, finding out their expertise, plugging them in. And at the end of it, you know, we opened and it's like, it's working. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Gratifying.
So what about starting a nonprofit? Like, why the nonprofit format, I guess?
For the school?
Yeah. Or just,
Well, so, I mean, nonprofits, so everything, every nonprofits and for-profits and not-for-profits, they're all businesses, and they all need income, either through donations or through, you know, charging for your services or your products. So if you have a pizza place that essentially makes $1,000 for $8,000 you spend, it's going to shut down because, you know, you can't keep going. You can't keep paying your people, or you can't keep paying yourself. So you have to make a little bit of margin to pay the owner, pay the employees, and then then the pizza shop's going to continue to exist. If you have a school, it's very unlikely that whatever tuition you're bringing in, or public schools have free tuition, that's covering all your costs. So what ends up happening is donors make up the margin. So if you're spending, like public schools spend like $9,000 something per student. If you need to spend more than that, you actually do need to do fundraisers. Some public schools do fundraisers, right? For their gym or for their special ed program or for supplies. So any margin between what you bring in from the state or from tuition and what you actually need to spend comes from donations. In a nonprofit model, you could think of it this way. If we had to pay taxes on our tuition, you know, say our tuition's covering 75% of expenses. Say we're paying even 10% tax, probably more like 20% corporate tax. So even 10% tax, that means we're losing another 7.5% or 10% of our revenue. So we'd be 65% of our costs are covered by tuition after taxes. So the nonprofit is the government's way of encouraging people to do like very service-oriented or community-oriented services. So they say, look, you don't have to pay taxes as long as it's going for the public good, and that allows us to not have to fundraise. We'd essentially be fundraising to pay our taxes, which just kind of feels yucky, you know?
Yeah.
So now we can go to our donors and say, like, every donation for you is a tax write-off for you, and all of our tuition revenue is not taxed for us, and that's really how a lot of, I mean, even hospitals, a lot of these ministries and services could not exist. The bottom line is we would just shut down.
Yeah. That makes sense. Because I've always wondered that, like, how do people work at a nonprofit? And
hopefully the workers are making profit. I mean, the employees are getting paid, vendors are getting paid, service providers are getting paid, textbook manufacturers they're all getting paid, but they're getting paid, through our revenue, essentially tuition donations.
Yeah.
We're trying to build an endowment so we have an extra, like a third stream of income. Our revenue isn't taxed so that more of it's available to actually cover those costs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to think of a good podcast in this, but there's good books and podcasts on how the tax code actually works. The tax code doesn't just try to collect a certain amount of money. It's behavior management. It's incentivizing certain behaviors. So, for example, real estate is a very tax-advantaged investment, meaning the government wants you to invest in real estate. They're going to take off taxes to make it easier for you to grow your portfolio. And once it's at a maximum size, they tax that. So overall, they give up the taxes on your small transactions to get the tax on your big transactions. I have a friend that's selling their $800,000 commercial property. That's going to be like $90,000 or whatever in taxes. If they taxed it early on, then it's less likely you would have gotten to the point of owning your own commercial building. So likewise with nonprofits, the government doesn't tax them in order to encourage people to take on these riskier, it's hard work.
Mm-hmm.
But what's it doing? It's benefiting these kids, and it's benefiting the teachers. They love to serve, right? So there would just not be as many nonprofits if there weren't these tax advantages.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good to know. I just wanted to see how we're doing on time, and then
well, it is 5:24.
Oh, okay.
But
time flies.
Time flies.
When you're having great conversations,
Yeah.
great ideas, idea friends.
Idea friends.
I think at 5:15 you said that it was we were at like 30 minutes. So should we go to 5:30?
We're at 40 right now.
So I feel like we should go.
Yeah. Have any wrap up questions? I have maybe we each do a wrap up question because I'm still. I mean, we could talk for hours, but if I had to choose one, I have my question.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to do one
All right. Well, I remember when we were on the phone, you mentioned a book that you said kind of changed the way that you thought about money, and so I wanted to hear a little bit about that and how that influenced you.
Yeah, so it's I don't think I have it in here. It's people call it the Purple Bible. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's kind of a paradigm shifter. It's not just information. It's like a red pill. That analogy of like the Matrix. It's once you take it, you sort of can't look back. And he was raised by his bio dad, who was a poor, employed government employee, educated professor. But his friend Mike, his dad was a rich, entrepreneurial, never had a boss in his life, investment guy. And he would literally go to Mike's house and hear one message or one answer to his questions, go to his house and get a totally different, almost the opposite answer. And that's the paradigm, that's the model he uses to kind of like explain why most of us, maybe not all of us, but we're raised by families who didn't have money or didn't know how to use money, how to make money, how to find money, how to keep money, how to invest money. And so what do we do? We do what we're used to, and it's like, the way I think of it now is there's certain habits that are guaranteed to make you poor. Do you have all those habits? Because if so, like, you are guaranteed to get that result. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the universe. There's nothing wrong with society. There's nothing wrong with capitalism, right? This is nobody's fault. This is the logical consequence of these behaviors. Spend everything you make. No more than 3% raises when inflation's more than 3%. That means you're on a downward trend. Like, I hope and pray that the IRA and the 401k will come through. You don't know when the stock market's going to crash. So there's certain things that were even maybe you taught, like invest and forget about it, and one day you'll retire. hope and pray the Social Security is not bankrupt. There's things we're taught that put all the control outside of your hands. I'm going to trust my financial advisor and the government, and I'll be okay when I'm older or whatever. Or I'm going to trust my boss to give me a raise. You know, they said if I work hard and keep my nose down, in 3 years, I'm going to get a raise. It's a long time to wait. Mm-hmm. What if you could open a Shopify store and give yourself a raise today? You know? So it's, for me, it was like Robert Kiyosaki was that like paradigm shifter of, and one of his concepts is, an asset puts money into your pocket every month, and a liability doesn't. So everything we spend money on, you know, food and gas, these things just go away. You need to, but they're not investments. Even your primary house, even if it goes up in value, it's not putting money in your pocket every month. That you're paying money. Your car, you're paying money, and also your car's value is probably going down. Yeah. So I looked at my wife. We were driving around listening to it on audiobook. I said, you know, out of the thousands and thousands of financial decisions we've made, we've only made one smart financial decision. It was buy that darn house in Kentucky that we still own, because that has made us money every single month since we bought it, rather than just paying money and then it goes into a black hole. So it's more about thinking about preserving value. How do I take the value that I have? Maybe for you right now, it's I have my service, I have my energy, I have my time. You can go serve anybody. You can serve a rich person, you can serve a franchise, a giant corporation, you can serve a small business, you can serve a nonprofit, you can serve anybody. So how do I leverage what I have, which is my time and my service, to accumulate some value and then to invest that? So you know, we're all investing our time all the time. You're investing your time, I'm investing my time. How do I invest my time to make money? If I need money, how do I invest my money to make more money? Not everybody needs to become an investor. Some people don't need money. Some people are content being poor. So it's not like a right or wrong thing, but the knowledge and the information is out there too. If you want to accumulate more money in a sort of an ethical, in a way that produces value in the world, you're not just like, I pick on this guy, but like the guy who invented silly bands, you know, made like $100 million. Yeah, selling silly bands, it's a fad, and they're gone. Did he really bring value to the world? Like, we love novelties. So he gave us a novelty for a couple of weeks. But I'm talking about long-term value, you know, a company or a service or a product or something like that. If you are really able to bring that value to people, you will be compensated. And that's also logical consequence, you know. Did that answer it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
good.
Yeah.
I sort of just had one question that's kind of like maybe umbrellas over everything. It's kind of like more personal. Because you do so many things, and I'm sure it gets stressful. You know, you were taken to your limit. How much has faith helped you through this, and has it changed? Like, was it different when you were 20 from how it is now, and is it, how has it like sustained you?
Yeah, I mean, it's 100%. I mean, my brother just asked me the other day that question, like how much does your faith influence your life? And I'm like, I mean, the goal is you don't do anything but for the love of God, right? Like, you don't have any other motivations. You want that motivation to grow and expand and include everything. You help the poor and you help the least of these for Christ's sake. You wanna love your family for Christ's sake. You know, I joke that I didn't know what the Bible verse "love your enemies" meant until I had kids. You know, because they're the ones who were like striking me with blunt objects and stuff like that, waking me up in the middle of the night, screaming in my ear, throwing up on my nice things. They all just got sick. So, you know, you have to love your enemies, but that like includes your closest friends when they hurt your feelings, you know? But so I've always wanted to serve, and to like learn to pray. I've been trying to learn to pray for like 19 years, and, you know, making a teeny bit of progress. But so that's always, it's like, this life is for like productive suffering. That's part of the plan. And it's for joy, you know, but like joy in the moment, not joy because of some success or some accomplishment. And so, yeah, that's really everything. It's just wake up and pray and serve and the rest is just gravy.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty beautiful. I think that wrapped it up so nicely and on a hopeful message. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, thank you so much for talking with us for this first ever Polymath Podcast episode.
My pleasure. I can't believe I got to be number 1.
Yes, it really set the standard. I mean, these next ones better be like dynamite or something. Yeah, and thanks for everyone who's watching and will watch. And yeah, thank you so much.
Peace.
We're here.
Thank you guys.
That was really nice.
Is that good?
Yes!
Awesome.
That was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I made an idea friend.
An idea for